Not creepy at all.
Hello and welcome to Wizards, Warriors, and Words, a fantasy writing advice podcast. My name is Jed Herne, author of The Thunder Heist, and today we have a really special episode where we have not one, but three special guests along with our very own Dirk Ashton. So, guys, do you want to kick it off and introduce yourself, starting with Dan?
Hi, I'm Daniel Potter. I'm the author of Freelance Familiars and most recently the Full Moon Medic series, which just recently came out, which is urban fantasy about a werewolf paramedic.
And it's kicking ass on Amazon.
Yes, it was doing very well in the charts.
Nice.
I'm Matt. I write under the moniker MD Presley. I'm not a doctor. I do a role building series, Forging Fantasy Realms, and I have a YouTube channel that I just started under that name where I demonstrate world building techniques by building a whole new world in about an hour once a week. So
Sweet.
Yeah.
It's an amazing.
After we're done, can you give me the name of that channel and I'll put it in the link as well for people who are watching this on YouTube?
I certainly will.
Yeah, that'd be good. Dirk?
I'm Dirk Ashton. You guys know who I am. I've read all of Michael J. Sullivan's books.
And lastly, Michael.
Do I have to introduce myself? You just called me. I'm Michael J. Sullivan. Yes, I write your Revelations and write your Chronicles and Legends of the First Empire, and the new book coming out is Nolan.
Fantastic. And thank you for substituting in for our other Michael Fletcher, who was not available today, but we needed to keep our Michael quotient high. So much appreciated. And do you guys want to talk a bit about where you... Oh, sorry, Dirk, you go.
We're actually at a kind of a weekend retreat.
We call it summer camp for writers.
Yeah.
But they let us all in.
Or something.
Yeah.
They don't let you out though. That's the key part.
Yeah. But we're at Michael's house, at Michael and Robin's house. They invite us down. We've done it once a year. We couldn't do it yet last year, but there's like nine of us here, and the rest of them were sleeping.
They had a late night.
Yeah.
We did.
So what kind of stuff do you guys get up to there? Just to give a bit more context for our listeners.
We eat a lot of good food, there's some bourbon and beer that gets drunk. And we actually have little panels where we talk to each other about things that we know about. Anything from working Goodreads to Kickstarters to writing stuff.
And Dirk tries out new material on us, and it never goes over that well. But
Yeah.
you got to start somewhere.
No.
We must be the second audience for that, Michael.
The nude performative dance with Eric got at me went over very well a couple of years ago. Though.
Especially when we hit them.
Full quiver, yeah.
Especially when they
Atlas performer, as they call him. Fantastic. What kind of stuff have you talked about so far? Like what sort of panels have been the discussion points for this one?
So we haven't really started.
Ah,
Yeah.
fair enough. Oh, that's right. You said you were getting the plane last night to this place, didn't you?
Yeah,
Top
we still have two more writers coming in this morning from the airport. So
Yeah,
it hasn't got up to speed yet.
Zach Pike, author of Orconomics, is coming, and
Nice.
Don Kong, who writes a bunch of cool books.
Just writes everything
Yeah,
all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
But,
So
Melinda Spencer, ML Spencer, and ML Wang are here, authors of Dragon Mage and Sword of Kagan, and Teal Greylock.
It
awesome.
was too good.
No,
And it's not listening anymore. All right.
she put her headphones in. He's over there yelling at us.
Awesome. Yeah, little bonus to off-screen guest there. So today what I thought we could do is we have a bunch of listener questions. Thought it would be very interesting to get your take on it, particularly since you're probably coming from slightly different writing backgrounds or approaches to our usual hosts. So the first question comes from Nick Carlson, who asks, has anyone got really excited about an idea only to find out from someone that it's been done, but you haven't just read that book? Do you then give up the idea or try just as hard to tweak it into something original because you can't let it go? Who wants to kick this one off?
I frequently have found out retroactively that someone else did this thing that I did, and I'm just always pleased because I do it better.
Always a good solution?
No, people have often talked about that my books are similar to Grey Mouser.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What was his name? The guy who wrote that?
Two guys. Oh,
Bar and a Grey Mouser.
yeah. There's two names, right?
Yeah, he did a bunch of short stories in like the 20s, and they all put it together in the novels. But people say, "Oh, so you did, you were patterning after that." I'm like, I've never read those books. So eventually, a fan actually brought me one of the books and said, "Here, read this."
Yeah.
I still haven't gotten to it.
There you go. You can't say you're copying if you haven't read the book. The author was Fritz Lieber, I believe. Far
There you go,
the Grey Mouser. Yeah.
Well done. Early on, I had not read American Gods, and somebody read my first book and said, "You need to read American Gods," and I'm like, "Oh shit!" So I read it, and I'm like, "Oh, mine's not really like that."
No,
so,
it's not.
So I was like,
Very
"Okay."
good.
It has gods, and it's in America part of it.
It's fit-
Mine
it's
is-
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
American God.
I mean,
God's America. Yeah.
So how are you responding to the lawsuit from Neil? The cease and desist.
It's been difficult.
Neil doesn't do lawsuits. He just sends ghosts.
Avoiding
Right?
being served.
Why do you think I'm hiding in the Shenandoah Valley?
Oh shit!
In the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, I'm in the Rocky Mountains. Yeah.
Wait, are you allowed the profanity on this show?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Swear all you like. Yeah.
I didn't believe it later.
It's got Michael.
No. We've got an explicit rating.
Fletcher is
Wow.
on this show. Yes, there's cursing.
There was really no way we could do it without Mike if we tried to keep it clean. So every week I go on YouTube and I tick the box that said, "This content is not for children."
It's just performed by children.
Correct. But specifically for adults.
Right? You ever have that happen?
Well, I come from a screenwriting background, so it's like, hey, it's just like this. Like, that's a selling point. It's just like this, but the serial numbers are still piled off. Like, yeah, that's awesome. So, like, that's like it's. I work with a lot of Chinese companies, and so they're like, hey, it's. I remember one instance they're like, hey, and the character is the Black Widow, like Black Widow butt, and like, no, Black Widow. Like, this is, yeah, it's Black Widow. Just don't call her that. All right. Moving on. Like, so like in the film industry, just like is a great thing.
What did you call her? Brown recluse?
Yeah, something like that. I don't care. Like I name all the characters after my roommates at certain points in times, and then I give them a Chinese name after the fact. So,
Anyway,
yeah. So, anyways, yeah.
Wait, so you name all your characters after your wife and son?
Yeah, no, roommates I've had in the past, but in the last one, my son's friends' names are the English versions of it, names I don't particularly care for, which they will never find out about, but because no one will
I
ever
will
see
now
it.
that you've said it on this podcast.
I know, now it's out to the universe.
Yeah. I mean, there's a standard spiel where you'll do it differently than anyone else who's done it, but no, I have not had concepts. I've whole cloth of my books. I have a book that's about an urban fantasy about a mountain lion and a werewolf paramedic. As far as I know, those haven't happened yet.
Oh, I've read that before. Except it was a monkey and a donkey.
Yeah, I know that there are a lot of new authors that really fret about that stuff, but really don't. Just
Well, the really great one is the one where they always say, "Oh, I have this great idea, but I'm afraid someone's going to steal it."
That's the worst.
Take that down.
No one cares.
because even if they steal the idea, they're not going to write it the way
Well,
you
and the
wrote
other
it
thing is to
anyway.
say, "Oh, but this is such a great book. And this book has to be brought out in the world." I'm like, yeah, and then what? What's the next one going to be?
Uh-huh.
Well, what do you mean? What are you ready to kill a mockingbird? You get that first book and you never have to write again.
Yeah.
We all hope.
I think this is definitely in the category of things that are not hugely productive to think about. I think there's an aspect of it is useful to consider how this is sort of fitting into existing genres out there and to think about how you're going to market it. So from that perspective, it's useful to kind of know what it's similar to. And then I think the guiding principle is always, what is going to be familiar about the book that is drawing readers in, and then what's going to be the strange aspect that is adding your own, little spin on it, whether that is mountain werewolves or whatever unique
That's
thing
what
you're
I
adding.
want. Same thing, but different.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
this is- You see the same thing in books that are popular again and again and again and again and again in KU or on Amazon or.
Yeah, if you want to be completely original, go into literary fiction.
Oh, and
Yeah.
see how that works.
See how that works out there.
Even then, I feel like a lot of literary fiction has the exact same blurb. So, it's not
All
always.
books not coherent, but yeah.
There you go.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Nick, for that question.
Hey,
Much
and-
appreciated.
What's that?
I was just saying thanks to Nick for that question. Next one is from Paul, who asks, I don't introduce the main character in the first chapter. Is this okay, or should you really get them in there, or how long can you get away with not introducing them? I've heard arguments from both camps. It's just a bigger hook when I open from one villain's point of view and the main character walks in the middle of something he really shouldn't. And he also adds, for context, I have 3 point of view characters throughout my story. So the question here is, how far can you wait before introducing your main character? Should you get him in really early? Is it okay to kind of open with other characters? What's your thoughts on this?
Between different perspectives.
So my first series that I did that actually I'm most known for, when I created that, I considered it like a television show. And old television shows where you see like the crime and then the sleuth comes in later.
Yeah.
So I literally opened it up with the worst, most vile character. And everyone who read that assumed that was the main character. And they're like, I'm not reading this. So after that, when I re-released it through Orbit, I created a separate little chapter that I put on the beginning of it, which is now how the books begin, where I do introduce with the main characters, because you want to make sure that most people are going to judge a book with the first few pages. And if they don't like what they're reading, they're probably not going to keep reading it. So as long as it's good, it's fine. I mean, there are no rules in writing. You can do whatever the hell you want, whatever works. But I mean, I've had many stories that always start, the second chapter is where the main character comes in, and my chapters run about, I don't know, in page form, they can be like 25 pages. So it's not, there's no hard and fast rules, just kind of how compelling that opening of the book is. Now, Christopher, I can't remember his name, but Empire State, I think it was, killer opening chapter. And I was like, wow, it had nothing to do with the main character at all, but it was enough to get me to buy that book. And once you've bought it, you're probably going to read it.
Yeah.
And if they don't,
Sunk
who
cost.
cares?
Yeah.
I already bought it.
Are you talking about Christopher Ricciuto?
No, he's Australian. No,
All right.
he's British. I think about it.
People get us
Sorry.
confused all the time.
I can't remember names.
Same thing. They all talk funny.
Use mate a
We
lot.
can't remember them so they can't sue us.
Yeah. Right. Don't name their name.
Very smart. Very smart.
You're gonna say-
Yeah, so that's a good point there. I think about it's less, introduce this character at this point, don't introduce him at this point, and it's more about, are you communicating the correct feel that represents the rest of your story, and is that drawing readers in? Because you probably don't want to start with.
Like the first chapter is a perfect cross section of the entire novel. So if you have humor, put some humor in it. If you have some suspense, you have that in there. If there's some action, it just should be kind of like a sampling, so that when you get done with that, like, I have a really good idea, because then they don't feel when they get to the end of the book, it's like, I was bait and switched here because I really like this opening chapter, but now the rest of the book is something completely different. But if you give them some good sampling and they like it, they're probably going to be happy the whole book through.
One of the coolest.
Wow, I've been
things-
doing this wrong.
I got one of my favorite books on writing, which is not about writing, is How to Read Novels Like a Professor. And one of the things that he said that helped me a lot was that your first chapter, your first few pages of the book, you're really teaching your reader how to read your book, which is what it's going to be like, and exactly like you said. And now that you bring it up, my original version of Paternus, the first book, now called Rise of Gods, the first 2 chapters were flipped. I introduced it with the young main characters, and then went to this kind of more action scene in Detroit. And when I re-released it years back, I flipped those chapters, and that actually really helped, and people stuck with the book longer, and I introduced with not one of the actual main characters, but it gave a much better microcosm of what the story is about, because there is this character who seems not quite human, who gets attacked by something that's definitely not
You're
human.
talking about the opening of Paternus.
Yeah.
pissed me off.
Yeah. Right.
So I really wanted to see that character, and I'm not going to give any
And
spoilers,
he
but
disappears.
he disappears. I'm like, I was so vested in this
till the
character, and
first-
suddenly,
yeah.
poof,
till
I'm done with this book.
till like the middle of the book, he doesn't come back, and then he's through all the rest of
that's
the trilogy.
musical, the bouncer, right? Or is that,
Yeah, that's the
okay,
Bouncer,
yeah.
Could be a
Which that's a
Could be
great
a-
opening to
yeah.
the book. I really enjoyed the opening.
Thank you.
And-
I take that as a great compliment.
You should.
So
I
structural.
know.
You've got it down in recording, Dirk, so you can pull that out at future times when Michael says your books aren't good. You can be like, no, I have audio proof that you said they were amazing.
So structurally speaking, in screenwriting, though, you open with the problem. Like, well, okay, if you everyone, Death to the Reader by Terry Rossio is a very, very, very old blog post, but he and his writing partner did Pirates of the Caribbean back when it was still good, like before the franchise. Well, they also wrote Aladdin, like they've been around for a long time. And they were readers for a while, which means they got the scripts and then they made notes of what they thought would make a good script, which became kind of canon. Anyways, he has a wonderful blog post that is still up somewhere called Death to the Readers. And one of his first precepts is like, you start with a punch and you end with a flurry. And so like, yes, you need to start with like something that hooks people. And in screenwriting, you often introduce the villain first. And like, this is the problem that needs to be solved. And now here's your character. So think like Star Wars, like you open with Darth Vader just wrecking some shit. Jaws, you start with the shark doesn't see it, but you introduce the problem. And like, now here's, how is this protagonist possibly going to deal with this? But it's different medium altogether. So I can understand with like agents and stuff are like, don't start with a prologue. What are you doing? Wheel of Time. Why are you starting with these characters? So I understand why people who have to read 6 novels a day, or the opening chapters of 6 novels a day, are like, just start with the story. But then again, they're not thinking on a larger term because they don't need to, their scale is like, I'm going to read 6 of these today. And if it doesn't grab me in the first chapter, in the first, why would you start with these other characters and then bring in the main character? So there's competing interests on that. There's like inside and outside evolutionary factors of why you
thought
should.
of that, but yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So there you go. So more problems than I have answers for.
That's usually what we do.
Yeah.
Just
I mean-
answering, bringing up more questions rather than answering the question. No, those are good things. I'll definitely try to put that blog post in the show notes. Death to the Reader, you said that was.
Death to the Reader, I think.
Death
Yeah.
to the Reader. Okay.
I've got
great.
the link somewhere. Yeah, it's he had like, I think 35 rules, maybe it's 135 rules. Anyways,
Cool.
I
That's
printed
a
them up and had them on my wall because that is some of the best advice on writing I'd ever seen. And
Great.
But very, very successful writers. So
Sure. And on the Wizards Warriors Word podcast, we really do love killing our readers. So Death to the Reader does sound right up our
yeah, viewership just keeps dropping every week.
Killing our listeners.
alley. They keep coming back as zombies. It's a very effective way to keep those download numbers churning because they just have nothing else to do because they're zombies. Dan, what are your thoughts on introducing the main character and how to go about that?
I just start.
You start with the main character.
Yes,
pretty
I
much
always,
all the time.
yes. I mean, my 2 urban fantasy series are both
Does it start when they wake up?
first person. No, they do not start when they wake up. I saved that for the second chapter.
All right, sorry.
Yeah, and what I want to do is give people like a look into their head and their problem, right?
Mhm.
And often I start with a much smaller problem than the actual conflict will be.
Yeah.
And off leash, my first of the freelance familiars. He's basically, he has a problem where he's basically unemployed, and then he just walks into a situation where his next door neighbor gets run over and things get weird. You just want to, I don't know. All that advice sounded a lot better than what I do.
No, actually, what
No,
you're doing is I'm
sounds
going to
fine.
try and reinforce because that's
Right.
exactly what I would suggest that any
Right.
writer does,
Yeah.
which is you need to get the reader into the story.
Right.
And the best way to do that is present something relatable.
Right.
So rather than having, you know, an attack, a magical attack on someone, instead they can't find their sock because everyone can relate to that. And
Right.
you get to develop the character and how they go about looking for the damn sock. And you
Right.
can hear what's going on in their head. It's like, you like this character. So then when the magical attack comes,
Right.
you have everything set. You're like, oh, I want this guy to win now because he's so cool. When he had this problem with the freaking sock.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, having a little problem to begin with, the bigger one.
And he finds out it actually is a gremlin. He's running through the house. He has to chase it.
I mean, if you can relate the two so that the little problem is actually connected to the bigger problem, that's even better.
Well, I
That's-
was just thinking the perfect example of this is a lot of Abercrombie's introductions. You know, like the one that comes to me is Bremen Dan Gorst in The Heroes, where his first introduction is he's marching with a bunch of other soldiers up a muddy path, and a cart is stuck in it, and no one else wants to move it out of the way, so he has to get there and shove it himself. And it's such a good introduction because, yeah, like you say, Michael, it's a problem that people can relate to. You know, people have probably been bogged before on road trips or something like that. People have probably perceived situations where no one else is helping and they have to do it themselves. And it also characterizes some unique stuff about him, like the fact that he's really strong and, you know, despite that, he is a bit of an outcast. And yeah, it's a good bridge to the overall war, which is the main conflict that's happening in that. So that's a really good tip. Try to start, small and relatable, and then link that to some of the bigger problems later. That's good. Anything to add to that?
Yeah.
Cool. Maybe the last question, and then we can wrap this episode up, is Daniel asks, was curious how you guys edited. I know you talked about it before on the whole, but I guess I'm curious about each of your different processes. He says he's almost... he says he's almost done with his first draft and he's taking a month off to work on another project and then coming back to it, which I would recommend. And yeah, he's just curious, do you guys work one chapter at a time, one page at a time, or do you just go through the manuscript and edit as much as you can in a day?
So
Basically,
here's
what's the process?
my latest way to edit.
Okay.
Print out your manuscript, and then you go and get a vat of liquid nitrogen. You dip it in the liquid nitrogen, make sure it comes out a solid block.
Yes.
Then you sledgehammer it into a million different pieces,
And put it back together.
and then you put it back together with tweezers. And by the time, and you just leave out all the bits that you didn't want, and you just, and once you put it back together, then you have to go and write the missing pieces and crumple them up, and then like put them in and refreeze the whole block, and eventually, you invoke some old gods, then the novel comes out.
That's
And
awesome. That's actually really convenient, Dan, because our sponsor today is a liquid nitrogen vat distillery. So, like use our link, get a discounted liquid nitrogen vat, and use Dan's editing method. That's that's crazy how that lined up.
Really?
That's the question.
You have to work through the editing process. And when do you do it? Do you do it as you're writing, or only when the first manuscript is done?
So I write the draft. Whoops.
You found it?
Sorry, this is an important thing.
This is important, and you guys will be. So we were leaving the airport yesterday. I had picked up Dan, Matt, and ML Spencer and ML Wang at the airport. We're leaving, and the back of the Jeep came open, and the only thing that fell out was Matt Presley's laptop case.
No.
And we got around, came back, and it was gone. Nobody
No.
could find it.
Yeah,
But airport lost and found just called, and they got his laptop.
that's a miracle. Wow. That would freak me out so much.
They
They found it?
the back
Someone turned it
opens
in?
with all our luggage,
Yeah.
and the
Humans
laptop fell.
are decent
Yes.
sometimes.
Wow.
I know. I've written. Now I can finish my Grimdark series.
Yay.
Here's a lesson, kids. Back up your manuscripts.
For the
Yeah.
love of
Back
God.
up your
Always.
manuscripts.
And don't joke about ha ha ha. I don't back it up. And then like it fell out. Like it had already fallen out. We didn't know. And I was joking about I really need to start backing things up. And then we went and checked.
Yeah, we're going through the pay for the parking, leaving,
Yes.
and the guy comes running up. The back of your Jeep is open. And
Jeez.
laptop was gone. Like the whole back was open and it wasn't like beeping or anything.
Yeah, that freaks me out. Yeah, that's why I use Google Drive, because then it just automatically backs everything up. So that's definitely a good tip. If it hasn't happened to you yet, it will happen at some stage.
Standing in our driveway, and he's like, because I don't know how to feel about this. I said, don't feel any way about it because you don't know what's going to happen. You could find this.
Yeah.
It's just coming to the feel-good author's cabin that does it for you.
Yep.
Happy endings. That's what we're all about.
Cozies happen here.
Yeah, none of this grimdark ending over here. This is all light and fluffy.
It will
Go
be
to, Mike,
found.
go to Mike's house.
Right. So the question was editing, right?
Editing.
Yes.
So this is going to be edited completely because this is.
Oh no, no editing.
Oh no, he
Fast and loose.
So as far as editing, I write the whole draft done, and I will get halfway through the draft. And then what I do is I go back and I reread from the beginning to the middle, or to where I left off, get an idea of how it feels and if I'm going the right direction. And I try to interpret it the way a reader would. I'm like going, at this point, they're probably thinking it's going to go this way. And if that's true, should I go that way? Should I not? Then when I finish the entire
I might have to call back this thing.
the entire draft, I'll let it sit. Usually I'll go back and I just do cleanup, just small edits here and there when I've seen awkward sentences. When I get done with that, it's very close to being done. Then I get to my alpha reader, my wife. She reads it. She finds logic problems in it. And she says, this doesn't work here. This doesn't work. I'm like, oh, you're right. That's a screw up. So then I will go back and I'll fix that while I'm writing the next book. I jump in and I do a couple of rewrites, put it back, and then we send it over to a beta team. She runs that, and we have anywhere between, 15 to 50 people will read that. She correlates all of their comments, gets rid of the ones she knows I'm not going to make a change on, gives me the ones that she knows it will make the change on, and then she gives me a Word file with commented out, the questions, and then I will go through and judge on that, what I want to change, what I don't want to change, redo the thing, give it back to my wife. Then it goes off to the actual editors, and we usually use 2 editors. Usually they're the people that we had worked with at, the big 5 publishers. So we have really good people. The editors are people who I have worked with before, who I have trained. They know what to change, what not to change. When I worked with Del Rey, they gave me an editor who literally went through and took out or put back all the words I took out. And my wife's like, I'm not even going to show this to him. He will not accept any. He's just going to set everything.
Put back all the that's.
Yeah, I basically took out all the little words and I had it really clean. And they, instead of all the and then the, I was like, you can't do that. So I have trained editors who know what I want and what I don't want, and that's pretty much the process. When it goes through that, a little bit more time before it goes out, and that's pretty much it.
He trains the editors like lions, like lion tamers train their lions.
Well, it's interesting because there's so many different kinds of editors. There's the editors that will want to rewrite your book.
Mm-hmm.
There's editors who won't touch it at all.
Yeah.
And so you have to find one that reflects your style. What do you need? Do you need someone who's going to completely rewrite your sentences, or do you need someone who's just going to look for commas and misplaced words and repeated words? So you get someone who reflects your style and helps you out where you're weak. And I mean, that's pretty much how you have to get that down, because if you don't do that, then you're wasting your time with the editor.
And you'll never know if you have the right editor or not until you try them.
Right.
And it's always a good idea if you're trying to find an editor or proofreader to ask them to do a first chapter or for first 5 pages, depending on what they have time on, and then see how you feel.
And
about what
also,
they've done.
also with that, if you give them a sample of your work, they understand the amount of work they're going to have to do based off of your writing. And it's usually to give them something in the middle, not the beginning, because the beginning's usually polished. So give them something in the middle, have them go over it, and then let them based on that sample, they can say how much they're going to charge you for this many more pages, however long the length is.
Yep.
That way they have a reason for doing it, because they can actually set a more accurate price tag.
Yep.
Great tips.
I mean, I'm a big rewriter, so my first drafts are like a draft 0, but I try to just crap it out, just get it done. If I try to edit chapter by chapter or page by page, you'll never get your work. You'll never get it done.
No, because it changes.
You'll never get it done. So it's best to get everything out. You might have to stop and re-outline as you're going. I do. And then get it all done. And then I go back and then I fix the prose as much as I can and maybe even swap some chapters and things like that myself. And then once I have it to a certain point, then I send it to proofers and editors, people that, and also beta readers and alpha readers are great. They catch a lot of stuff too. And they've been super, super helpful for me as well. And those people work for free just because they want to see your work early on. So for real, what do you do, Dan?
For real. Depends on the book.
Tell them about this last book that you had, what, 3 or 4 starts before, and you restarted 3 or 4 times.
So I'm working on Full Moon Medic 2, which is Midnight Triage. Triage, yes. Pick a title you can pronounce, people.
That's the best advice you're ever gonna get. Like Mike, you picked a title that only he can pronounce.
Most of my titles.
Rairia. Did I do it right that time?
Right.
No, damn it. I never get it right. It's only 3? I said Rairia. Oh,
Rira?
Rairia.
Ryra.
Raiera.
Raiera.
Damn it.
There you go. Rhymes with Saphira. There we go. That's a good way to remember it.
Well, my original 3 books for when Legend of the First Empire was supposed to be a trilogy, I had it be Rune, Frey, and Durg. And
Dirk.
Ray's like, no.
You named the book
Don't
Dirk?
do that. Durg, Dherg. But it was like, no, people aren't going to know how to order this when they walk into a bookstore, so they can't pronounce the word. And then, of course, my second book was Av and Partha, but that was when I was self-publishing, so I didn't care.
They can find it on Amazon.
But you're right.
That's it.
There is an advantage, though, to having a unique word be the title. It's great for searching.
Right. Great SEO.
Mm.
They'll find it.
True.
Anyway, editing. Right?
Yes.
Editing. So I'm a discovery writer, or pantser, or I don't know, naked butt writer.
I like that term. I'm going to start using it.
There's sometimes I'm writing to find the story, and often I don't need to do this, but the latest book, I started without a real strong concept of what this book is going to be. As in, I had the characters, and I had their personal conflicts, but I kept on writing the story and leaving out any sort of overarching plot. And so it took me like 4 tries before I managed to work that plot into like the first couple chapters. So I started this latest one 4 times, and I usually don't do that. Sometimes that just happens. But then generally once I have a draft, I either it's in, I know I need to do a structural edit and just fix some things. And then once I have a draft that's a little better, I have my spouse read it. And they have context for me to basically tell them what's wrong with it. And then I go fix what's wrong with it. Mm-hmm. Then it usually goes to my editor for the first time because my grammar is horrible. And then it goes to beta readers because I'd rather them read a draft that's not so, because they'll focus on just the grammar mistakes instead of the feedback, and they'll still find lots of stuff on the grammar. And usually I haven't really had an experience where the beta readers have found something that I haven't. Mm-hmm. And once I go through the beta reader comments, it goes back to the editor for a final time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I work completely different. I cannot pants. I cannot.
The irony
I
of that
can't
is
discovery
just-
right. It's just in my personnel. I can't. If I don't know where I'm going, I freeze up. If I don't know where I'm supposed to go, so I have a lot of like respect for that ability to do that. Well, you also write very quickly too.
I don't write.
Well,
quickly.
pretty fast. Not like
Not
not like
Tucker.
Andy Peliquin or Phil
Right,
Tucker
right,
fast.
right. I do.
Nobody does that.
I
They're
write-
superhuman.
I write on the weekdays. My quota is 2,000 words a
Yeah,
day, which I usually hit.
yeah.
And
Well, it's consistency is
Yeah.
the most important thing.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's not the amount.
yeah, for me, because the majority of my stuff is first person,
Yeah.
you just have to you just go and sit in their head and you ask yourself, what does this character want to do?
Mhm.
And a story comes out. It might not be the right story that
That
you
you end up with.
that you end up with. But I all my books are very much about the consequences of the last book.
Mhm.
As in, they have made choices and they survive because of those choices. But now they have to live with those choices.
Uh-huh.
In addition to this other overarching threat that's coming in. But the latest book, in Full Moon Medic, she sold her soul basically to the moon goddess to become a werewolf. What does that mean? She's a medic.
Yeah.
And she's got a wolf in her head
Yeah.
that wants a pack, she has to take care of this child
To eat
now.
people.
I mean,
So, and her roommate is terrified of her
Yeah.
because she spends half her time as a wolf that's as big as a horse.
Wow.
Well,
That's big.
That's a big horse.
but that's like a gravity to it. I remember there was a critique of the Hobbit movies, which we all probably agree is the worst thing that ever happened to Tolkien. But they pointed out that in the barrel scene, the infamous barrel scene, there was no sense of gravity. There was no sense of repercussion of the physical antics that were going on. And they were cartoon characters, and it stole all of the gravitas, if you will. Yeah. But I mean, it's the same way of if the characters' actions don't have repercussions, then if you reset every book, the stuff needs to carry over.
Yes.
The previous book needs to have repercussions in the next book, or else it doesn't have gravitas.
Yeah.
What was the question?
Editing.
We were talking about
Editing.
Our editing
Sorry.
process. Yeah. What is your editing? Do you edit as you go? Edit at the end? How does it work?
I edit at the end, which is why this laptop loss was such a big deal, because I had actually written the rough draft over a year ago, over 2 years ago. And which is one of the reasons it's so hard to edit, because now I have done several projects in between, and now I have to go back and get into the character mindset.
But you might have a completely fresh viewpoint. It might help.
Oh, I'm a big fan of distance, of being able to walk away from it, cleanse your palate with something, and then come back to it
Yeah,
a couple of weeks
Stephen
later.
King says set it down for 2 months.
That actually
No,
works.
most of us don't have that luxury.
Yeah.
Most of us
But
aren't.
he says set it down for 2 months and do
Frog.
something else, and then come back to that project
Yeah.
with a fresher mind.
Right, because you get myopic when you're in it. You're this is the plot, this is what's going on, this is the characters, this is all I see, and then you can look at it from a reader's perspective. So time is the only way that you can look at it from a reader's perspective.
Absolutely.
As self-editing, in my opinion.
Boy, this
Awesome.
went a little 20 minutes, didn't it? How many questions have-
That's all right. This has been very good. Quick shout out to our patrons. If you haven't already supported us on Patreon, you can go to www.patreon.com/wizardswarriorswords. And that not only gets you things like free advanced reader copies from us, but it also lets you have priority question access for when we do listener question episodes like these. So the link to that is in the show notes if you want to check it out. I believe, also thank you to our high tier patron, Daniel Henderson, and another Dan, Dan Potter. Do you want to talk a little bit about your latest book?
Emergency Shift is an urban fantasy where instead of having the supernatural world being established, being where, the vampires have existed forever and they're mega powerful and mega rich, or the werewolves are immortal and stuff. It's all starting during the story. Magic is coming back to the world. And so the main character is the first werewolf in the world to exist.
Cool.
And she is a paramedic who, you know, in the course of being a paramedic, runs across a fae who's trying to defend a little girl, and the fae's dying wish is that she takes care of this little girl. And being a paramedic, she says yes, because you generally say whatever you need to try and keep hope alive and keep the patient alive. And that turns in.
Don't
That's
make
a
a deal with
bad
the fae.
idea when it's a fae.
Yeah, locked in.
Don't eat their food. Don't make deals.
Yes. And so things get bad from there for her.
Awesome. What was the title of that again?
Emergency Shift.
Emergency Shift.
On Amazon.
Awesome.
It's
Emergency Shift. All right. Well, thanks guys for coming on. This has been a really unique and different episode. So I appreciate you giving us the time for this. Hey, I mean unique in the good way, not unique in the like bad pile of trash way. Yeah, no, this has been good.
in a dark way.
All right. So thank you everybody for listening or watching to this, and we will see you next week. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.